Hi everyone, it's me, creegirlhistory, and I'm here with another video. Today's video is about Indigenous history in Canada, or Manitoba, where I'm from. We're going to be talking about this man. He was a First Nations man and his name was JJ Harper. I just want to start this video off with a trigger warning because this video has traumatic events about like police violence. If you are triggered by stuff like that, maybe not watch this, because it was honestly a little bit triggering for me to research all this. That's just a heads up for you. And I would like to acknowledge his family and that they lost their loved one. The reason that I'm doing this video is because I want to kind of tell these stories and give this information in a way that's more understandable, because when I was reading all of this, it was hard to understand. And like, I hope you understand this video and it teaches you a little bit about Indigenous history. Let's get into it. Okay, so JJ Harper, he was a First Nations man from Wasagamak Indian Band, which was in Island Lake communities in northern Manitoba. JJ was killed on March 9, 1988 by Constable Robert Andrew Cross of the Winnipeg Police Department. JJ's death was the result of racial profiling. There's now a day that's dedicated to honoring JJ Harper. This day is called the National Indigenous Justice Awareness Day, and it's on February 23rd of every year. It's not a statutory holiday, but every time I work for a Native organization, we actually get this day off, which I think is cool, because like when I was working at a non-Indigenous organization, they didn't get that day off, and it kind of felt like they weren't acknowledging Indigenous or First Nations days, which were like important to me, a First Nations person, you know. So working at a First Nations organization, we get those days off and they are acknowledged and recognized, and it just feels like kind of liberating as a First Nations person, you know. Anyways, February 23rd, so that's a day where we recognize JJ Harper and other people who have faced injustices in Canada. There is also a movie on the JJ Harper story, which is called Cowboys and Indians, and it was made by Adam Beach, he's my hero. Just kidding, he's not my hero, but I think he's really cool. I'm editing this video right now and I want to say that Adam Beach is actually cool. I met him yesterday at my friend's fundraising event. I got a picture with him and I talked to him about this video. I was like, please don't copyright me, and he said he won't. So he's a bro. Everyone say thank you to Adam Beach. So let's talk a little bit about JJ Harper and then we'll get into the story of what happened to him. JJ Harper was born John Joseph Harper on December 30th, 1951. JJ had a wife named Lois and 3 kids. He had to move to Winnipeg from his home community, Wasagamak, to work as the executive director of the Island Lake Tribal Council, which his community was part of. One part in the movie showed JJ's brother convincing him to move to Winnipeg to be the executive director of the Island Lake Tribal Council because JJ had a strong voice and he was good at speaking up.
No way I'm moving to the city.
I'm not asking you to live there, just stay a couple of years.
They don't like Indians like me in the city. Remember what happened on the last trip?
We need somebody to go to bat for us. People listen to you, JJ. They trust you.
I don't want Lois and the kids down there. It's not good for them.
Can't always do what you want to do, John Joseph.
I think that part of the movie was kind of significant because he made that decision to leave his home community reluctantly, but he did it for the betterment of his own community so that he could work for his people. So he made that choice, and it actually ended up to be a choice that changed his life forever. On the evening of March 8, 1988, JJ and his friends were out for some drinks. The group had gone to several places that evening, such as the St. Regis Hotel, the Westbrook Hotel, and a lounge called DJ's. JJ had at least 1 drink at each of the bars that they went to that evening. There were conflicting statements about JJ's demeanor and behavior that night. Employees at DJ's say that JJ was acting aggressively and he was spoiling for a fight, and that he had to be escorted escorted out of the bar. The friends that JJ was with that evening say that JJ wasn't belligerent at all and he left the bar on his own. And that's how it shows it in the movie. It shows him almost getting into a taxi with his brother and then he ends up walking away.
That country band was a great JJ, let's go!
Bad idea. Don't worry about it, just go.
Son, you getting in?
Nah, I'm gonna walk home.
You sure?
Air will do me good.
JJ?
JJ was 37 years old. He was 6 feet tall. He weighed 185 pounds. He was wearing a black jacket, blue jeans, and brown cowboy boots. On the same evening of March 8, 1988, a white Dodge Aries was stolen from the Westbrook Hotel by a man named Melvin Pruden. Melvin was 19 years old, 5'9", and weighed 155 pounds. He was wearing a dark gray jacket, acid wash jeans, black running shoes, a red shirt, and gloves. Melvin was also with 2 other friends that evening. When Melvin stole the vehicle, he saw that it was running, but the doors were locked. He decided to kick in the window and take off with the car. Melvin's 2 other friends didn't get in immediately, and Melvin drove down the street and his other friends kept walking. So they met further down the street, and then he asked one of his friends to get into the car, and then the friend did get into the car, and then the car was reported stolen almost immediately. Melvin and his friend drove around the same area that the car was stolen from, and they had even gone back to the Westbrook Hotel where the car was stolen from originally, and they went to go buy beer. 2 hours had gone by before they were spotted by the police. And the police officers who spotted them were Constable Robert Cross and Constable Catherine Hodgins. Constables Cross and Hodgins had been partners for about 3 years at that point, and Catherine Hodgins was the senior between the two. Catherine was part of the Winnipeg Police for 9 years at that time, whereas Robert Cross was only on the force for 4 years. They were scheduled that evening to work from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. on March 9, 1988. At around 2 a.m., they gave a speeding ticket to someone, and then shortly after that, they saw the stolen vehicle. Robert Cross was driving and Catherine Hodgins was in the passenger seat, or the jumper, which just meant that she was the person who would jump out of the car and chase someone if someone went running. Cross and Hodgins began to pursue the vehicle and chase the vehicle around the Weston area. It rained that evening and it was still cold out, so both vehicles never went over 60 kilometers an hour during the chase, so they weren't going that fast. Melvin drove through several stop signs and at least 1 red light during the getaway. Both Robert Cross and Catherine Hodgins testified that neither of them could see who was in the stolen vehicle. During the car chase, Catherine Hodgins broadcasted information about the car chase over the police radio, such as the fact that they were in the chase, a description of the vehicle, traffic violations that were happening, and their location and speed. However, Catherine never mentioned any description of the driver over the radio. Melvin Pruden tried to turn, but he ended up crashing into a snowbank, and he and his friend fled on foot.
I see him.
2 males out of the vehicle. We're in pursuit.
I got him.
Received.
Robert Cross and Catherine Hodgins were kind of far behind the vehicle, so they didn't see that the car crashed into a snowbank, but they saw the 2 suspects running away. They followed the suspects in their car until the suspects were between 2 houses and they could no longer see them. Hodgins broadcasted that they were both in dark clothing. Cross drove a little further down the lane, pulled over, and jumped out of the car.
Over. 2 males, dark clothing.
Be right back.
My partner's out of the car.
Cross was driving and Hodgins was supposed to be the jumper, but Cross ended up jumping out because the suspects were on his side of the vehicle. Hodgins went in the driver's seat and parked the car, and she went to check the stolen vehicle and take out the keys. She noticed that there was a case of beer in the car. Hodgins then returned back to the police car and went to wait for her partner. While Cross was chasing Melvin Pruden's friend, Cross had slipped and fell on some ice. Melvin's friend said he looked back and saw Cross on the ground yelling, "Stop!" Melvin's friend said that he thought that Cross was grabbing his gun to shoot him, so he did stop, but Cross denied this.
So why did you stop running when Constable Cross was chasing you?
Figuring he had his gun out.
Why would you figure that?
Okay, like, just before he fell.
He fell?
Yeah, he wiped out Major. He's coming around the corner, right?
Police, stop!
I ran a bit more, and I came to a fence, and I stopped. I didn't want to get shot.
And why would you be fearing that?
Because he had his gun out.
Get off the fence right now! Don't you move!
So, Constable Cross had his gun out while he was running.
Yeah.
Contrary to the various testimony we've heard from all of the officers.
Wouldn't know nothing about that.
Anyways, Cross caught the youth and put him in the car. Hodgins and Cross questioned Pruden's friend, and Hodgins had written down notes on the scratch pad, and then she lost these notes. Pruden's friend later testified that he told the officers that he didn't know what Pruden was wearing, and he only gave them a nickname, which was Manny. He also said that Manny was between the ages of 17 and 19, and he never gave a description or said that Manny was 22. Hodgins had reported over the radio and through the cop car's computer system that the suspect was male, native, black jacket, blue jeans, and approximately 22 years old. Cross moved the vehicle, they parked and kept watch. There were 4 other cops who also became involved in the pursuit, which these cops were Constables William Isaac, Randy Hampton, Richard Poniera, and Grant Eakin. So William Isaac and his partner Randy Hampton arrived on scene after the search for Melvin Pruden had begun. Both of them were in the car, and Randy Hampton got out at the intersection of Weston and the back lane of Logan Avenue and Alexander Avenue. I'll show you where this is on the map. Hampton watched the back lane and he saw a man crossing, and he assumed this was Melvin Pruden. Constables Richard Poniera and Grant Eakin arrived, and Hampton told them about the man that he saw. 3 of the officers followed the man. Randy Hampton was directly behind him. Richard Poniera, the other cop, went on Logan Avenue, which was the street beside the lane there. So they had like the houses in between them, and Richard Poniera was walking there just in case the suspect fled through the houses from that back lane and across onto Logan Avenue. Grant Eakin parked his patrol car at the end of that lane, right across from where Randy Hampton was. After a few minutes, Eakin saw Hampton gesture to him. After that, Eakin drove up the street towards Logan and Blaine. Hampton came upon Melvin Pruden and testified that he said nothing to him. After this, Pruden went running in between 2 houses, and then he went across Logan Avenue. Hampton radioed over to Poniera, who was still on Logan Avenue, that Melvin Pruden was running through the houses, and Pruden ran across Logan Avenue and then went into the park, and he outran Poniera. So Poniera broadcasted the details of the chase over the radio transmission, and then Eakin drove towards the chase, which was near Electa and Gallagher Avenue. In the meantime, Hampton went running towards Logan Avenue, and he went further west down Logan towards Weston Street in case Melvin Pruden went running that way, but he didn't. Constable William Isaac was circling the area in his patrol car already. He was sitting at the corner of Electa and Gallagher when he saw Pruden running across Stanley Knowles Park. Isaac backed his car in the direction where Pruden would be crossing the street on Gallagher, and then Pruden saw him, so he fled between some houses on Gallagher into the back lane. Poniera broadcasted over the radio that Pruden's description was Cross, native male, 5'9", slim build, and wearing a gray jacket and jeans. Pruden was hiding in a backyard, but he was eventually found by Isaac and was arrested at a house on Gallagher Avenue. The news of Pruden's arrest was immediately broadcasted over the radio, and there was no suggestion of any other suspect. So the chase was over, and it was announced over the radio that it was over. Constables Danny Smith and Douglas Hooper arrived at the time of Pruden's arrest and saw Constable Randy Hampton walking on the road near Electa Street and Gallagher Avenue. They stopped to talk to him briefly when they heard a gunshot.
You know, I want my case of beer back, eh? Matter with you guys.
Rob?
Within 1 minute, they heard Constable Robert Cross call for assistance on the radio.
I'm just west of Wings. I'm gonna need my partner here. And I'm also gonna need an ambulance.
Right after that, Eakin, Ponera, Smith, Hooper, Isaac, and Hampton immediately went searching for Cross. At approximately 2:37 a.m., Cross left his patrol car and was in the back lane. 1 minute later, he heard that the suspect had been arrested over the radio. Cross started to head towards the area where the arrest happened. He was walking across Logan Avenue, and this is where he encountered JJ Harper.
Second suspect in custody, native male, 18, jeans, gray jacket, over.
Hey! Hey, yeah! Right there. Hang on. Hey! Sir! Buddy, I want to see some ID.
I don't have to show you my freaking ID.
I asked you for some ID.
Right near Stanley Knowles Park. When Cross saw Harper, he asked him for his ID. According to Cross, JJ said that he didn't have to tell Cross anything. JJ tried to keep walking past Cross, but Cross grabbed JJ's arm and tried to stop him and turn him around. Cross said that JJ then pushed him and fell down. As Cross fell, he grabbed JJ and JJ fell on top of Cross. Cross began to struggle with JJ on top of him, and then Cross said that he felt tugging at his gun holster. Cross said that he thought that JJ was trying to grab his gun from his holster, so he reached down to grab his gun himself. Cross said the gun came out of his holster and both he and JJ's hands were on the gun. Cross testified that both he and JJ were tugging at the gun and it went off and it hit JJ right in the middle of the chest. Cross said that JJ had stiffed up, staggered back, and fell down. At 2:40, Cross radioed for his partner and for an ambulance. After the gunshot, Hodgins, who was in her patrol car still on Wink Street, she rolled up her window, locked the car, and went running back into the back lane where Cross was. Hodgins shouted at Cross over her radio, and once she heard Cross call for assistance, she ran back to her patrol car. Smith and Hooper were the first on the scene, then Eakin and Ponera, and then after that Hampton and Isaac arrived. Smith and Hooper said that when they got there, Cross said to him, "He went for my gun and I shot him." Smith and Hooper said nothing more to Cross and went to attend to JJ Harper, who is still alive. Smith and Ponera rolled JJ over, who was unconscious, and loosened his clothes to try and find the wound. He used his hands to stop the, Smith placed a bandage over it and maintained pressure. An ambulance arrived and JJ was rushed to the Health Science Center emergency room in Winnipeg. JJ succumbed to his injuries shortly after this. So this happened at around 3 a.m. At 9 a.m., the Winnipeg Police issued a news release about this incident, but they didn't identify anyone who was involved. JJ's family wasn't notified about his death until around 9:30 that morning, which was 6 hours after his death. There were several mistakes made in the investigation of the shooting. One was that Officer Hodgins was the senior officer on scene, and she was supposed to to secure the scene and oversee the collection of evidence. However, she failed to do this because she was concerned about her partner and attending to her partner. It was also Hodgins' responsibility to secure the weapon that was used to shoot JJ, and she also failed to do that. None of the officers on the scene did this until Constable Glenn Spryzak arrived, and he is the one who secured the scene. The youth who was in the back of Hodgins' car also testified that he heard Cross say, "I happened to reach for my gun, it happened so fast and I pulled the trigger." The youth also testified that he witnessed Officer Spryzak say to Officers Hodgins and Cross, "Don't say anything." The youth also said that later on during the inquest that Hodgins said to him, "It was all your fault. See what your stealing got you into." He also said that Hodgins said to him, "You blue-eyed," because he was light-skinned and he had blue eyes. Hodgins denied saying this. The next day, the police department's firearms board of inquiry submitted the report to the police chief, Herb Stephen. The report cleared Cross of any wrongdoing. Chief Herb Stephen issued another news release which identified JJ Harper as the victim, but it didn't identify Cross as the shooter. Stephen also presented the board's finding in the news release stating that JJ's death was caused by his assault of the officer and subsequently the struggle of the gun, which accidentally discharged and killed JJ. Stephen also stated that there was no negligence on the part of the police officer. After all this, JJ's family and community continued to advocate for justice for him. They didn't accept the explanations that were given to justify JJ's death. JJ didn't commit a crime and he was only arriving home from a night out. Because of the family and community advocating for JJ, it actually resulted in the Aboriginal Justice Inquiry. It resulted in recommendations to the policing in Winnipeg. So it was acknowledged that JJ should not have died that night, and it's acknowledged that that was an injustice nationally because of the day, National Indigenous Justice Awareness Day, and it was the police's fault, and they shouldn't have been so careless and reckless with their guns. I also wanted to say in the movie there was a few dramatic things that actually happened during the justice inquiry, the Aboriginal Justice Inquiry, which resulted in the recommendations for policing. So they kind of went over this whole situation, then they presented it to the committee, and the cop who was supposed to be investigating this whole thing internally for the police, his name was Inspector Ken Dawson. He actually ended up unaliving himself a few days before he was supposed to present all this to the Aboriginal Justice Inquiry Committee. It was super unexpected and shocking. It showed that happened in the movie Cowboys and Indians. It didn't talk about that in the inquiry, which is where I got most of my information from. It was also taking a toll on Robert Cross's mental health because he actually ended up in the psychiatric ward and he was making threats to unalive himself as well. It showed in the movie that he showed up with a gun to the hospital threatening them so that they would help him with his mental health. Those are just some other facts about this whole case. It's actually super sad. It's kind of a heavy topic, and I'm sorry that it was a heavy topic, but it's also a very important topic, and I hope you learned something about Indigenous history today. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for my next video. Bye.